Razorback fans finally got a good look at Arkansas basketball and baseball over the course of the last week. But what did we learn about both teams? Let's talk about it on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, a Friday crossover edition, Pot at the Palace / Bombastic. I'm Curtis Wilkerson, joined as always by my man, Andrew Ellis. And Andrew, buddy, we have learned a lot about Arkansas basketball and baseball over the course of the last week. We had the tip-off tour in Hot Springs and Pine Bluff. We were at SEC Media Day. Arkansas baseball played 3 games against Oklahoma State out at Baum. Man, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get right into our takeaways. But before we do, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. It was definitely good to see both of these different squads, particularly the basketball side, honestly, man, because it's like Fort Knox over there, man. It's hard to get info, hard to get footage. Like we always go nuts anytime they tweet out like a 30-minute highlight. So it's good to see them get out in the state, see fans come out and see them play. And it was good to talk to those guys at SEC Media Day. I feel like I know more about this team, and I'm more excited than ever to watch this team play.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll jump into some takeaways from the tip-off tour, and then I know you got a lot to say about this Oklahoma State baseball series, which was exciting last weekend. But yeah, I think maybe one of my top takeaways from the tip-off tour for basketball was who didn't participate. Arkansas is a little banged up right now. They have to get healthy, and I think the point is getting them healthy for the season. So John Calipari was holding out some guys for precaution. Nelly Davis didn't do anything. Jonas, very limited. Adolph, pretty limited. And then a couple guys on the back end, Melo Sanchez and Cash Chavis, didn't participate either. Obviously, with Nelly Davis and Jonas and Adolph, those are going to be 3 of your better players, probably starters for this team. Doesn't seem like it's too big of a deal with Thiero. He took off and his neck was above the rim on a dunk that he had down there. So I think he's probably fairly close. Nelly Davis had the brace on his wrist, and that was off by the time we got to Media Day. So he's probably working himself back into it. But Jonas Adolph, he looked a little slow, wasn't moving too well, and kind of looked a little bit lost out there at times. They need to get him back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it was good to see the guys out there. And like you mentioned, they held a lot of guys out of the tip-off tour. You don't expect them to go balls to the wall, going crazy, trying to show off for the fans. But it was good to see the squad out there. And I feel like what John Calipari was saying at SEC Media Day kind of mirrored what we saw at the tip-off tour of, hey, we're a work in progress. It's not just some magic wand. He's used the magic wand reference a good bit of, it's not just going to be a magic wand. We're going to walk in here and just be a 30-win team. We've got to build towards that. And there's plenty of room for this team to do that. And I'm sure fans are probably going to freak out when they watch some of these exhibition games if Arkansas is not just firing on all cylinders right away. But it was good to see some of the initial talent for this group out there. Big Z and Trevin Brazil, I had a good time watching those guys in particular just work with their coaches during drills and stuff like that. I'm really excited about the offensive potential of this team. Defense, we didn't get to see much defense. They did a lot of offensive sets against the GAs, but defense is kind of what Cal talked about a good bit at Media Days. And just looking at these guys, looking at the bodies, being down there on the floor with them, it really makes me excited to think about the kind of possibilities. You mentioned Adolph, who we didn't get to see a ton of. I'm excited about this Arkansas basketball team, man. A lot of size, a lot of versatility, offense and defense, man. It was good to see a first look at them.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And yeah, defensively, you're 100% right. And the 3 guys who were limited or didn't really participate are probably their best 3 defenders. So that makes me feel really good about the possibilities there. I'm glad you mentioned Trevin and Big Z. First of all, it looked like they were playing through Big Z in a lot of those half-court sets that they were running out there. And then Cal kind of doubled down on it at Media Day and said, yeah, that's something we're trying to do. I love that because he's so unique at his size with his ability to he's just a skilled big man. He can kind of dribble, pass, and shoot at 7'2", 245. So that's a good problem to have. I'm anxious to see what they do with him. And I was going to say, the guy that I was probably most impressed with was Trevin Brazil. I mean, he looks really good. He looks healthy. The explosion is back. He looks comfortable. I thought he put some good weight on. He looks bulkier and stronger in his shoulders. And man, he really played to the crowd well. Like he knew when people might be getting a little sleepy during some of those drills, and he'd throw down a windmill dunk, playing above the rim. And honestly, I know Cal said, we don't want him shooting a bunch of threes. He was shooting the crap out of it from three, man. The stroke looks smooth out there. So that was good to see. DJ Wagner, another guy, Kentucky transfer. I thought he looked more explosive than he did last year. He dunked a few basketballs, which is something we didn't see. But hey, Cal said, listen, he is healthy now from that ankle. He's more athletic, more explosive. Okay, thought I saw that. He looks smooth. He looks comfortable and confident. But the three freshmen, Andrew, I really have my eye on. I know that you had a keen eye on Billy Richmond. I want you to talk about him, but I'll say real quick, Karter Knox, I was very impressed with, a guy that has really gotten into basketball shape. He looks like an SEC wing. He spent like 45 minutes before they got started working with Brad Calipari on fine-tuning everything, shooting mechanics, release point, footwork, making sure he was square. Really a lot of attention to detail, which I like to see. That means it's a dude who's really putting an effort on perfecting his craft. And then Boogie Fland, he's so smooth, man. He was one of my favorite players to watch. He's electric with the ball in his hand. He is taller and bigger physically than I thought he was, which is a good thing. But that dude is an absolute competitor, can really, really shoot it, and a guy that can create a lot of offense.
Yeah, those three freshmen, man, just do not look like freshmen. Karter Knox in particular looks like he's been an 8-year NBA vet. If you just look at his body and kind of the way he walks around out there, he's an imposing figure out there on the wing, man. He looks every bit of 6'6". They mentioned he lost 17 pounds. I don't know where he lost that set. He must have found it because he looked big out there, dude. He was strong. And Boogie Fland, same thing. Like, obviously a little bit, probably bigger than you thought, but he also just the way he carried himself, man. He looks like he knows he's a guy. And Billy Richmond, man, I feel like he's been one of the breakouts of this tip-off tour, like one of the guys that people have been impressed with a little bit, because I think it's fair to say he's been overlooked this offseason a little bit, which is hard to say about a guy who's as talented as he is. 5 years ago, he would have been like the highest recruit in Arkansas history. But he's kind of the odd man out here where people you don't see him in all those projected starting fives or the 7-man rotations, or, hey, I'm really excited to see this guy. But I was impressed with him. He looks the part. I mean, looks like a legitimate NBA wing out there. The left-handed stroke, it's nice to see. And also, they do this weird shooting drill where it's about 5 minutes. They just get up as many threes as they can. And Cal did the whole speech of, you got to feet in the air when you're catching all this thing. But I sat there and watched him and Karter Knox just shoot for 5 minutes straight. If you had not given me any context, I would have said, these guys are comparable as shooters, which coming into the offseason certainly was not the narrative around Billy Richmond. Seemed like he was more of an athlete, more of a defender type of guy, but I thought there was some promise there in his shooting stroke. And Karter Knox, we know he can shoot the ball. We know he can score as well as any freshman in the country. I was really pleased with what I saw from those guys, but I feel like Billy Richmond is the guy that's flying under the radar a little bit. I'm not saying, hey, he's going to be a star for Arkansas right out the gate, but I feel like kind of what Devo did as a freshman, where he just kind of burst onto the scene, and you look up in conference play and it's like, hey, they trust this guy a lot. He's one of their best defenders on the team. He kind of forced his issue and got into their rotation. It's not going to stun me if Billy Richmond does that same thing. Now he's got an uphill battle because he's got a lot of talented players in front of him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm really excited to see him come along. The upside, I guess, of some guys being out is that these freshmen have been healthy and they've gotten a ton of reps. Every single rep you could possibly get in practice, they've been able to get that, and they're going to be better for it. I really like some of the philosophies that we were seeing from them. Looks like Cal really wants his team to play fast. They were really emphasizing ball reversals. In fact, if they didn't reverse it a couple times per possession, Cal would stop it and yell at them. I like that. Get the defense in their rotations and then attack them. And his big thing is, hey, you want to shoot threes, but you better get a paint touch first. And I like that. Collapse the defense, kick it out. And it does look like Arkansas has some shooters, which is something to be excited about. But I do think that we're probably going to really start to learn a lot more about this team when they get into these exhibitions. They got Kansas next Friday. A week after that, they get TCU. When you see somebody against a different opponent, I think you start to learn a lot more about them. But we did get to see that with baseball, and we're going to talk about it real quick after a word from our partners. All right, guys, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. It's convenient. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments, such as chewable hard mints, proven treatments like Viagra and Cialis, or their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is simple. It's 100% online, no uncomfortable doctor's visits or anything like that. No insurance is needed. Just pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions do apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription is required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan.
There's no better time to be a sports gambler than the month of October. You've got MLB, you've got NFL heating up, you've got college football. I've got my eye on this Arkansas Razorbacks game because the Hogs are still underdogs as of today on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. You can get the Hogs plus 110 on the money line or plus 2.5 on the spread. Andrew Armstrong, you think he's going to get into the end zone for the first time all year? He's plus 160 right now to score a touchdown anytime. And America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, is the place to do it. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with just a $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. The final segment here. Equally important, maybe we just saved the best for last. Andrew, buddy, last weekend, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, little fall baseball series down at Baum. I know you were loving every bit of that. It looks like Arkansas really performed well, and I know you got some heaters, some takeaways to share with us.
It was definitely nice. You know, you mentioned how cool it is to see your team play against someone else. You know, because it's one thing, you go to the tip-off tour and they're busting up the GAs and it's, oh, hey, man, all these guys are awesome. They're knocking down all these shots. But what is every skeptical fan going to say? Well, can they do it in the SEC? Are they going to do it against Tennessee? Are they going to do it against Kentucky? And I know you personally, Curtis, it seems like every time I try to tell you anything about fall practice or fall ball, you're like, okay, you hit a home run off of Ben Bybee in practice. What does that mean?
Yep.
Well, today, you know, this past weekend, we get to see Arkansas do it against an opponent. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know how good Oklahoma State's going to be this year. That might have been the worst team in the country. That might have been the best team in the country. I don't know. But here's what I do know. On Friday night, when both teams threw their starting pitchers, you know, everybody threw about 1 to 2 innings max, nothing crazy. Arkansas, I mean, you would have thought that, you know, some of these pitchers could be, I mean, and Josh Holliday, their head coach, said you could throw a Padres jersey or a Dodgers jersey on some of these guys and nobody would be able to tell the difference. Arkansas's pitching overwhelmed Oklahoma State in that first game when everyone was pitching their guys. Arkansas had 18 strikeouts in a 9-inning game. 2 hits, one of which was an infield single against Carson Wiggins, who might have been the best pitcher of the day, throwing 101 on the gun. It was awesome to see that. Arkansas really, they knew the fans were coming out for that Friday game. They said, hey, we're going to throw the guys. We're going to get the flamethrowers out there. Will McIntyre, we'll save you for tomorrow. We're getting the flamethrowers out there. And it was good to see. I mean, just when both of those teams put out their guys on the mound, Arkansas was clearly superior. Arkansas also really rattled Oklahoma State starting pitcher. They got a transfer from Hawaii who was one of the top transfer arms in the country. They lit him up for 4 runs on 6 hits. He couldn't even finish his second inning of work, Curtis. They literally had 2 outs and they had 4 straight hits and they were like, hey, let's just call it. We don't want his pitch count getting up there too great. As a coach yourself, Curtis, I know you've played some baseball. You're a high-level athlete yourself. Not a great sign when you put your ace out there on the bump against the team and he's not able to get through 2 innings of work and you have to call it. Probably wouldn't inspire a ton of confidence, huh?
No, when you get chased in an exhibition where you're just trying to get some work in, that's a tough situation for sure. And just for clarification's sake, you said 18 strikeouts in a 9-inning game, and you said 101 on the gun from Carson Wiggins.
Those were some of the numbers I threw out there. 18 strikeouts and just 1 walk, which was if we came from Gage Wood, who really was outstanding. Gage Wood touching 96 miles an hour. It was awesome, man. I mean, Arkansas, that's just flat out dominant. And you know, it's funny is like you see it happen, and when you're in this setting where you're getting these guys who are going to be starters that are going to throw 5-6 innings, when you're asking them to throw 1 inning, it should look like that, frankly. They should go out there and let it eat. And so it's cool to see that on the Arkansas side. And these guys have been pitching against their own teammates who have seen them 100 times. Gage Woods faced all this lineup so many times. He's probably sick of it. And he got roughed up a little bit last week in the Fall Classic against his own teammates. The Arkansas pitchers were very excited to see someone else, a different jersey. So it was very good to see. But on the other side, Oklahoma State's pitchers did not enjoy that same success, which is really cool to me because it's like you got your best pitchers on your team, and some of their arms were really good. They had one guy that did actually kind of shut Arkansas down a little bit, but you would think it would be kind of like that, a low-scoring scrimmage with teams on there with both throwing their good arms, but it was 8-1, and it wasn't as close as the score indicated. Arkansas had 13 hits in that Friday game.
Wow, that's really impressive. And so Saturday, it was a little bit different, right? Like, I think they just wanted to make sure that every arm who they wanted to throw through. They played 2 games, but maybe some different lineups and some changes. What was going on there?
So what's funny is I didn't read the release. I did not know this was happening. I just thought they were playing 2 9-inning games like normal folks. That's what they're going to do. Then they started clearing the field after 5 innings. So Arkansas lost the first game 6-3. And that was the one, if there's any level of concern that would come away from this weekend, Ben Bybee gave home runs, one of which was to Jason Jones, a familiar face who played at Arkansas last year or the last couple of years. Will McIntyre gave up a 2-run home run. And Tate McGuire, who's had a really nice offseason for Arkansas, is kind of one of their rising sophomores that they're expecting to contribute. He also gave up a 2-run home run. So a lot of home run ball in that game. And there were 0 home runs for either team on Friday night's game, which I think that's what encouraged Arkansas fans, that you're able to score 8 runs on 13 hits, 0 home runs, which is nice. But so Arkansas drops the first game 6-3. Then they come back with a 5-inning game, and Arkansas went with a straight up freshman JUCO transfer lineup, and they threw a ton of freshman arms, and they ended up winning that game 7-1 when Oklahoma State did not do the same thing. They kept their starting lineup in there. So really just top to bottom, this pitching staff for Arkansas, it was really impressive to see them handle that Oklahoma State team the way they did. And some of those home runs, it wasn't like they were nukes. The wind was kind of blowing out gently to left field. I actually felt bad for Ben Bybee because he pitched 2 innings and gave up 2 runs, both solo home runs. And I saw some groans of, classic Ben Bybee. He's going to be a stud this year. And one of those home runs literally just scraped over the bullpen with the wind blowing out. He's going to be fine. But just top to bottom, this pitching staff, look, let's just be clear. Arkansas does not have a Hagen Smith on this team. They're not going to have a Hagen Smith for probably another 50 years for us covering this team. We might not see a pitcher that dominant again. But I think there's a real argument to be made that top to bottom, this pitching staff has more options, more depth. Christian Fauch is a guy we haven't seen throw a ton. He came in and closed out that first game. He looked dominant. Freshman Cole Gibbler, freshman Carson Wiggins. I feel like Arkansas has a really good mix of skill sets, and they were all on display this weekend. I mean, some of the guys that threw in that game 3 might not even make the roster, and they did a pretty good job holding down that Oklahoma State offense, which has some hitters in it, man. So it was really encouraging. It's good for those guys to get that experience. And like we said to start this thing, it's just nice to see Arkansas do it against another opponent. I mean, I guess technically you took 2 out of 3, even though they played about 19 innings total, racked up 26 strikeouts over the course of the 19 innings on the mound. It's just really good to see Arkansas kind of flex their muscle against another opponent. And offensively, man, I just want to touch on a few of these quick stats real quick. Brent Iredale, the Aussie guy that I've been raving about so much, he went 4 for 7 on the weekend. Vahiva Aloy goes 2 for 6. Nolan Souza went 3 for 8. He looked really good out there. Kahio Aloy, the younger Aloy, he went 2 for 5 as well. Reese Robinette went 2 for 7 with him, and he got to start with the starting lineup, which is nice to see. It's just good to see some of these guys, again, do it against another opponent. Arkansas is still going to have some position battles here to play out in the spring, and we're going to continue to monitor those on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, of course. But, man, it was just everybody, if anyone was struggling to kind of get behind or is hesitant to get excited for this Arkansas baseball team, had to instill some confidence in some of those guys to see them go out there and do it against a team in Oklahoma State who it's an NCAA tournament team year in, year out. Probably a team you might have to face down the road. To see them kind of flex their muscle was definitely encouraging to me, man. I'm buzzing coming off of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I love to hear that about the pitching. I mean, one thing we know is you literally can never have enough depth in a college baseball season. That's a grind, man. And so getting some of those young arms in there and throwing the flames early on is a good thing. Real quick before we get out of here, I got to ask you, because you said there weren't any home runs in the first game. For those who might have some runners in scoring position, freak out still left from last year. And then also because DVH said, in the last presser that you mentioned, we did this the week before, that they might be playing a little bit more small ball, stealing some bases, swiping some bags. Did we see any of that stuff over the weekend?
Not really. It was kind of interesting the way they did it. I think they stole 1 base on the weekend. They didn't attempt it too much. And honestly, I think that's kind of going to be the thing. If you face a team that has a pretty good catcher, a veteran catcher, it's hard to get things going on the base paths. But I like that this team, they showed they can kind of do a little bit of it all, because we know Arkansas is always going to hit a ton of home runs under Nate Thompson. Even in the years where they're struggling offensively, they're top 5 in the SEC in homers. There's plenty of power on this lineup. And two of the guys that homered this weekend were Logan Maxwell and Tyler Holland, which Tyler Holland's a freshman, kind of their two-way guy. Once he homered, it now meant that every player on the roster has homered this fall, which is cool to see. But they did do a good job of in runners in scoring position. Brent Iredale had 2 sack flies in Friday's scrimmage. It was good to see. I felt like the situational hitting was nice. And Arkansas did a good job of, once they got some action going, they didn't stop. That one inning where they had to yank the starter had 4 straight hits. And so it felt like the hitting was contagious a little bit. I think this team, they've got a lot of team speed, which it might not show up in the stolen base department, but in terms of going first to third, second to home, like they're going to do a lot of that. But overall, it was just a well-rounded weekend of baseball from the Hogs.
I love it, man. Well, good stuff. And that'll do it, folks, for today's episode of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, a crossover Pot at the Palace bombastic edition. For Andrew Ellis, it's been Curtis Wilkerson. We will catch you guys next week. Everybody have a good one.